The old library card had been used 3 years after the woman named on it was supposed to be dead, and the last book she borrowed was about how to recognize a child who no longer trusts adults. I was 67 when I found it, retired from glass blowing, and living in a small town outside Pittsburgh. For most of my working life, I made laboratory glass, custom lighting, and the occasional decorative bowl for people who wanted to own something fragile without admitting that was a reason. The card turned up inside a library book I had checked out for my granddaughter. Not hidden, not placed there for me. It simply slid from between the pages while I was sitting at my kitchen table. The name printed across the front was Margaret Sloan. I knew her as Maggie. She had worked beside me at Bellwether Glass in the early 90s. Quiet woman, careful hands. 38 when I met her, maybe 45 when she died. At least, that was what we had been told. Maggie was killed in a house fire in 1997. Her husband, Russell, survived. Their daughter, Claire, had been away at a school event. I attended the memorial service with the rest of the shop. The library card had an expiration date from 2001, for years after the fire. Stamped on the back was the name of the county library. Beneath that, in handwriting I recognized as Maggie's, were the words, "Please do not let Walter find Claire. My name is Walter Ames." I read that sentence several times. Then I turned the card over again, hoping age had made me mistake the handwriting. It had not. Maggie had known I might go looking for her daughter, and for some reason, she had been afraid I would find her. Maggie joined Bellwether Glass in 1991. She worked cold finishing, where the pieces came after the furnace, grinding rough edges, polishing seams, catching mistakes made while the glass was still hot enough to punish you. She was good at seeing what other people missed. A stress line near a base, a tiny bubble too close to the rim, a weakness that would not show until months later. "You trust glass?" I asked her once. "No," she said. "That's why I looked twice." At the time, I thought that was only about glass. Maggie and I became friends without ever calling it that. She brought extra coffee on winter mornings. I fixed a loose hinge on her lunchbox. She listened with my wife, and was going through chemotherapy, and I needed to say things I could not say at home. Russell came to the shop once or twice. He was polite, handsome in a tired way. He sold insurance and wore clean shirts even when it was 90 degrees. He shook my hand firmly and kept his other hand on Maggie's shoulder. I remember thinking they looked close. That is the danger of seeing people in public. You confuse arrangement with truth. Claire was 14 then. Maggie talked about her constantly. "She draws faces on everything," Maggie said. "Good faces, mostly worried ones." The year before the fire, Claire began coming to the shop after school. She sat in the break room doing homework, though sometimes I caught her watching the furnace through the safety window. She hardly spoke to me at first. Then one afternoon she asked, "Does glass always break where it's weakest?" "Usually." "What if you heat it again?" "Sometimes you can repair it." She thought about that. "Does it remember?" I smiled. "Glass doesn't remember." Claire looked through the window toward her mother. "People do." I should have paid more attention. Instead, I told myself she was a thoughtful child. Adults use that word when a young person's sadness makes them uncomfortable. The county library had changed buildings since 2001, but the old circulation records had been scanned. The librarian helping me was named Paula. She had gray braids, reading glasses on a chain, and the guarded patience of someone who had answered too many questions from people who believed curiosity entitled them to private information. I showed her the card. "Where did you get this?" "Inside a book." "That does not mean it belongs to you." "I know." I explained who Maggie was. Paula listened without changing expression. "Patron records are confidential, even after death, especially when we are not sure who is dead." That sentence made the room feel colder. "You think Maggie used this card?" I did not say that. "You did not have to." She looked at me over the glasses. "You were a glass blower?" "Yes." "Then you know pressure matters." I waited. Paula finally agreed to confirm only the titles checked out on the card after 1997, nothing more. There were 6. A guide to temporary housing, a book on changing legal names, a parenting book about traumatized adolescents, a collection of bus schedules, a guide to jobs that did not require references, and the final one, borrowed in 2001, When Children Stopped Believing Adults. The books did not prove Maggie was alive. Anyone could have used the card, but the due date stamps followed a pattern. Every book had been borrowed on a Thursday. Maggie's day off. Paula printed the list and slid across the desk. At the bottom was a branch location, West Briar Reading Room. That branch had operated inside a community center near the old steel district. I remember the place because Bellwether Glass delivered a set of replacement window panels there in 1998. 1 year after Maggie died, I had made those panels, and a woman at the community center had refused to come into the lobby while I installed them. At the time, I thought she was shy. Now I wondered if she had recognized me. West Briar Community Center was still open, though the reading room had become a preschool office. A woman named Dolores Finch had run the center back then. She was 82 now and living with her son outside Monroeville. When I called, I said Maggie's name. Dolores replied, "Which one?" That was the first crack. "What do you mean?" "She used two names." I drove to see her the next day. Dolores sat in a recliner with a blanket over her knees and a walker beside her. Her memory was sharp. Her patience was not. "You came late," she said. "I did not know there was somewhere to come." There's always somewhere. People just prefer directions. I showed her the library card. She took it, rubbed her thumb over Maggie's name, and sighed. She should have burned this. Was she alive after the fire? Dolores looked at me. Yes. The word landed plainly. No drama. No hesitation. I felt relief before I understood. I had no right to. Where did she go? She stayed near Pittsburgh for a while. Used the name Marianne Lake. What about Claire? With her. Russell thought they were dead. Dolores shook her head. Russell knew Maggie survived. That was not the story the newspaper printed. The fire destroyed most of the house. Investigators believed Maggie's body was too badly burned for visual identification. Dental records were used, or so we were told. Dolores said the body belonged to Maggie's cousin, Evelyn, who had been staying there secretly after leaving a bad relationship. Maggie and Claire were supposed to be at a school concert. They came home early and saw flames from the next block. Why did Maggie let everyone think she died? I asked. Dolores's eyes hardened. Because Russell found them before the fire department did. The first major twist was that Maggie had not died. She had used the confusion after the fire to disappear with Claire. Not from the law, not from strangers, from her husband. I asked if Russell had hurt them. Dolores gave the only honest answer she could. Not in the way people want proof. He controlled money, opened Maggie's mail, timed grocery trips, questioned Claire after school about who Maggie spoke to. When angry, he did not shout. He became calm and specific. Dolores said, "Some men make a home feel dangerous without breaking anything." Maggie had tried to leave once before. Russell found them at a motel and persuaded her to return. He promised counseling. He promised less control. He kept enough promises to make the broken ones confusing. The fire created one chance he could not manage. Russell saw Maggie and Claire in an alley behind the house. He told Maggie the authorities would blame her for Evelyn's death if she ran. He said leaving would make Claire believe her mother was a coward. Maggie ran anyway. Dolores helped hide them. Why was my name on the card? I asked. Dolores looked toward the window. Because Russell trusted you. That surprised me. He barely knew me. He believed you were loyal to your employer, your wife, and any story told firmly enough. I felt heat rise in my face. That is unfair. Probably. She did not apologize. After the memorial, Russell came to Bellwether Glass more than once. He asked whether Maggie had mentioned relatives, spare money, or places she liked. I had answered. I told him Maggie sometimes visited the county library. I told him Claire had a school friend near West Briar. I told him Maggie once said she wished she could start over somewhere people did not know her. I thought I was helping a grieving husband understand his wife. I had been giving him directions. Maggie learned about it through Dolores. That was why she wrote. Please do not let Walter find Claire. I left Dolores' house feeling like a man who had spent years admiring his own loyalty without asking who it served. But one question remained. If Maggie escaped, why Claire never contacted anyone from her old life, especially me, because before the fire, Claire had trusted me, or I believe she had. Dolores would not give me Claire's address. She has a family now, she said, a job, children. You do not get to ride because a library card fell out of a book. She was right, so I wrote a letter. Not an apology designed to earn contact, just the truth. I told Claire where I found the card. I admitted I had spoken to Russell after the fire. I said I had not understood what I was helping him do. I asked for nothing. Dolores agreed to forward it. 3 weeks later, Claire called. Her voice was older, of course, but the pauses were the same. Walter? Yes. I almost did not call. I understand. No, she said. You understand that as a phrase. I'm not sure you understand years. I let that sit. Claire lived in Oregon. She taught art at a high school and had 2 daughters. Maggie had died for real 6 years earlier from ovarian cancer. I'm sorry, I said. She had a good life. Not easy. Good. Claire said they moved often during the first few years. Pittsburgh to Erie, Erie to Buffalo, Buffalo West. Maggie cleaned offices, worked at a bakery, then trained as a medical assistant. Did Russell keep looking? I asked. For a while. Did he find you? Once. My hands tightened around the phone. In Buffalo? Yes. What happened? Claire said Russell waited outside her school. He did not grab her or threaten her. He asked to talk. She was 16. He cried, she said. That confused me more than if he'd yelled. Russell apologized, said he had changed, said Maggie had stolen his child. Did you go with him? No. Why not? Because Mom had told me what fear sounds like when it learns manners. That sounded like Maggie. Then Claire said, but Russell gave me something I never told her. Not an object that drove the mystery. A fact. He said I had helped him escape. I thought I had heard wrong. I helped Russell find you. That is what Mom believed. Claire said Russell told her about the day before the fire. He came to Bellwether Glass looking for Maggie. I met him near the loading dock and said she had left early with Claire because they had an appointment. I remembered that. What I had forgotten was why. Maggie had asked me to cover for her. She said Claire had a dental appointment, but they were actually meeting Dolores to arrange a temporary place to stay. Russell kept pressing. I told him I did not know where they went. That part was true. He said you lied to him. Claire said, I did. And he believed you knew more than you said. I did not. But Mom never knew you had protected the appointment. I sat down. Maggie had remembered only what happened later, when I answered Russell's questions after fire. 1 day of loyalty, then several days of careless honesty. Claire continued. Russell said you were the reason he arrived late. Late to what? To the motel where Mom first tried to leave. That attempt had happened months before the fire. Maggie told me she needed a ride to pick up a used sewing machine. I drove her and Claire to a motel outside town, then left without asking why they had suitcases. Russell tracked them through a credit card charge, but by the time he arrived, Dolores had moved them to another room. My delay gave Maggie one night to think. She still returned to Russell the next day, but Claire remembered that night as proof leaving was possible. The second major twist was not that I had betrayed them. It was that I had both helped and endangered them, without understanding either act. In Maggie's story, I became unsafe. In Russell's story, I became disloyal. In Claire's memory, I was both. That was harder to carry than innocence or guilt. It was also true. Claire came to Pennsylvania the following summer. Not for me. Her oldest daughter was looking at colleges, and Claire decided the trip could hold more than one difficult thing. We met at a cafe near where Bellwether Glass had once stood. The factory was gone, replaced by medical offices, and a parking lot too clean to remember furnaces. Claire was 53. She still drew while talking, on a paper napkin, She sketched a sugar jar, my coffee cup, the curve of my thumb resting on the table. You always watch hands, I said. They tell the truth faster. We spoke for 2 hours. I told her about Maggie at work, the jokes she made, the way she checked every glass edge twice, how proud she had been when Claire won a county art prize. Claire told me about the years after leaving, the false names, the fear of school records, Maggie refusing to stand near windows at night. She could be controlling, too, Claire said. That surprised me, though it should not have. After Russell, Mom thought safety meant knowing everything. Where I was, who I talked to, what I planned. Did you resent her? Yes. Did you forgive her? Some days. Emotionally mature people do not always answer with peace. Sometimes they answer with accuracy. Claire said Russell died without seeing her again. She had written to him once in her 30s, asking why he needed control so badly. He replied that he grew up in a home where people disappeared during arguments and returned days later. He believed keeping track of those he loved was how families stayed intact. That did not excuse him, Claire said. No, but it explained the shape of his fear. She looked down at her drawing. Mom's fear had a shape too. So did yours. Mine. You were afraid of becoming involved. She was right. I had helped only when helping could be mistaken for an errand. Once the truth became complicated, I stepped back. Claire asked to visit the old library branch. The community center had been renovated, but one section of brick remained, along with a narrow hallway where the reading room used to be. We stood there while children ran past carrying construction paper and juice boxes. This is where Mom became Mary Ann. Claire said, "Did she like that name?" No. She said it sounded like somebody who owned matching towels. I laughed, and Claire did too. It was the first easy sound between us. She gave the library card to the community center, not as a museum piece, not framed. They placed it in a small local history display about services for displaced families. Maggie's real name was not included. Claire chose the words herself. A woman, and her daughter began again here. That was enough. Before Claire flew home, she came to my workshop. I still kept a small torch and a bench for simple repairs. I showed her how molten glass gathers at the end of a tube, how it must keep turning or gravity ruins the shape. You never stop moving it? She asked. Not while it's soft. That sounds tiring. It is. I made a small, clear bird for her. Nothing elaborate. One body. 2 wings, a head barely suggested. The left wing sagged before it cooled. I can redo it, I said. Claire picked it up after the heat faded. No, it's uneven. So are most things that survive being made. She took the bird home. We speak a few times a year now. Not enough to rewrite the past. Enough to stop pretending we know only one another's worst role in it. I still think about that library card. Maggie wrote my name because she feared what I might do. Russell remembered me as the man who lied. Claire remembered the man who drove without asking, then spoke when he should have stayed quiet. All 3 knew me. None knew all of me. That is the trouble with misunderstanding someone. The wrong version is rarely invented from nothing. Usually it is built from one true piece held too close to the light.